And the meeting today of the Friends of Syria in Marrakesh is an important step. The United States has indicated that we view the Syrian Opposition Coalition as the legitimate representative of the Syrian people.
We've made a decision that the Syrian Opposition Coalition is now inclusive enough, is reflective and representative enough of the Syrian population that we consider them the legitimate representative of the Syrian people.
Now that Obama, along with 100 other nations, has recognized the Syrian Opposition Coalition and publicly acknowledged the growing al-Qaeda affiliate opposition, reportedly responsible for the death of U.S. troops in Iraq. In lieu of more unconventional tactics, the appetite for a Libya-like no-fly zone, unilateral or NATO-led multilateral military invasion will likely curb. If so, and Assad is likely to avoid mass bloodshed, traditional ethnic enclaves may, for a time, play host to a balkanized future for Syria. But alas, this is not a microstate world, where dictators are kept small and inconsequential. Assad and his particular brand of secularism will be replaced with, hopefully, something we can tolerate, huh?
There are many Islamist Salafist groups in Syria who have come from neighboring countries to take part in the Syrian revolution in the hope of overthrowing what they see as a heretical Alawite regime and replacing it with a strict Sunni regime. That's their goal, and they are in the forefront of some of the fighting. And they are the best, probably the best armed and best trained and most experienced fighters on the rebel side in Syria.
And what does it mean for the U.S. to put al-Nusra Front on the terrorist list and the preparations for? Do you see a kind of united European, possibly U.S. involvement in any kind of intervention?
Well, clearly the British and the French would like to intervene, but can't do so without the United States, as happened in Libya. But they have their own people on the ground on the borders of Syria, training some of the non-Salafist groups, while the Saudis and the Qataris are helping the Salafist groups. And they want very much to intervene to get rid of the Assad regime and have some influence on the opposition that would ultimately take power if it succeeds. But I think, in fact, given that the regime is as strong as it is and the opposition is as divided as it is, and some of the opposition being absolute anathema to Western countries, it's likely that this will simply help the fighting to go on and destroy more of Syria in the process.
The groups inside Syria, they're characterized as secular FSA and al-Qaeda jihadists, but really the line between that is quite slim. I mean, the FSA itself is a sectarian Islamist Muslim Brotherhood organization, and a very small amount of them are secular. And you have, of course, the foreign element jihadis from all over the Middle East and the Caucasus region in Russia that have come to fight in Syria, not only because of ideological reasons, but because they were promised a salary by the Qatar government and Saudi Arabia, which is also something that they said publicly. So these are the different groups. I would like to go to why the U.S. has now, after 2 years, decided to label one of these groups, Jabhat al-Nusra, as an al-Qaeda-affiliated terrorist group. And I think that's because this group has become most prominent in the media for its various suicide bombings and terrorist activity. But in actual fact, it's not very different from other groups inside Syria who are fighting the Syrian regime. I would say that just recently there was a media article, I think from the Telegraph, that said 29 of the brigades of the FSA have come together to reject the fact that the U.S. has labeled Jabhat al-Nusra a terrorist organization and have organized a petition to say that we are all Jabhat al-Nusra.
The key rebel coalition, recognized by the U.S. as the sole representative of the Syrian people, has thrown its weight behind the al-Qaeda-linked al-Nusra Front. Archie's Guyana Chichikan explains.
It's clear that Washington is trying to distance itself from extremists in Syria. They have designated the al-Nusra Front a terrorist organization. It's thought to be one of the most aggressive and ruthless groups currently involved in the conflict. Washington's decision to call them terrorists is seen as more of a symbolic move because many other fighters in Syria, possibly most of them, welcome the efforts of those designated terrorists. Efforts that include suicide bombings and killing of prisoners. In fact, the leader of the very Syrian opposition coalition, which the U.S. has just formally recognized and is supportive of, came out and asked the U.S. to reconsider their decision on al-Nusra because they've been so helpful in the fight against Assad.
Guido Westerwelle has also said that this group must use the momentum that they have right now to promote the process of, quote, erosion of the Syrian government. What does he mean by that? Are we going to see more arms, more financial backing, communications equipment, etc., to come forth by these Western governments?
I think there's no question about that. Basically, all we're seeing right now is the creation of a new face for what has been going on for the last year and a half and is likely to continue until the Assad government falls, presumably. And that is exactly as you indicate, the running of finance as well as arms as well as foreign terrorists into Syria via the smuggling routes that have been established and funded by Qatar and some of the other powers in the area.